Hi, my name is Fred Dixon. This is day 2 of the BigBlueButton World Conference 2023. So we're kicking off with a presentation on PILOS by Samuel, and I'm going to let him introduce himself, but it's actually a front end, as it says here, open source load balancer for BigBlueButton that has been built up and used quite actively at the university which he's at. Samuel, over to you.
Thank you, Fred, for your warm introduction. I would welcome you all to this presentation on PILOS, and I'm very excited to see this number of attendees interested in this talk. And I will talk a lot about the system, how we came to the state where we are right now, and what led to the development. A few words about myself. I'm a university lecturer here at the University of Applied Sciences in Gießen. It's in the center of Germany, and I give different courses for the bachelor and master students, and studied medical informatics here at the university, then became a student researcher, did my master's degree, and now I'm a lecturer here at the university, and use BigBlueButton on a daily basis for the different lectures, but also I'm responsible for managing the infrastructure and the development of this front-end tool that we built and called Pallets. So the talk today, I will break it up into different sections. We will start with talking about the COVID-19 pandemic, because I think for most of you and for us, it was kind of the start how we came about to use BigBlueButton. And I will jump back in time with you and show you what the challenges were back then, and how we found out about BigBlueButton. Then I will talk about how we use Greenlight and what the challenges have been in the past, and how we acted with them and found solutions that work for us. And there's a small tool that looks really unimportant, because it was just a statistics tool that we built for our internal usage, but it has had a major impact on the development of Pallets. And so we will have a brief look at this. Then talk about the chances and opportunities that we had when we decided to build Pallets. Then a few words about the PHP API that is the foundation for this front end that we built. Then we will focus on the product, have an outlook on what's to come, and then I'm really excited for the discussion in the end, and getting in touch with you about your ideas and your feedback. So let's get started and jump back in time to March 2020. And it was a Monday when I received a phone call from my supervisor that told me that the COVID numbers are rapidly rising. And you can see the graph here on the left. That's actually the data from the infection rate in Germany back then. And my supervisor said that there's no chance that the semester would start normally if this is continuing. So we have to find a solution to do some sort of online semester, because that will be the case probably in the next few weeks. And so, because I worked on real-time communication and collaboration in the past, he said, okay, you have some experience in that field. Now let's build a tool that can do this. And so the next few days before actually starting to building our own video conferencing software, I researched and figured out if there's already something out there, if there are open source products that we can use in our own infrastructure for this use case. And I was really sad that I didn't find anything. So we started building our own video conferencing here on Thursday. We didn't get much further than the first mock-up that was created by a colleague of mine. We said, okay, what we want to have is here in the middle, there should be kind of some screen sharing and some webcams. We want to know what course is it, a link to the Moodle course where additional material is, and we definitely need a chat for text communication. And I'm really glad that in the end of this day, I was super frustrated and thought this is impossible to build a video conferencing solution for this use case in just a few weeks. So I researched again, and really by chance, I found that there's a tool out there that's called BigBlueButton, and that's actually exactly what we need. It's an online classroom tool. It's not just a video conferencing solution, but it's built for education and that has many different features built in there to really help the teacher to interact with the audience. So it was kind of the perfect fit for this use case. It also already had this front end called Greenlight, where you can manage the rooms. And just a few days before, the Scaler was released so that it's possible to scale the solution. So that was really helpful for us. And back at the time, it was fairly unknown, BigBlueButton. That was the reason why I didn't find it the days before, because just a few days earlier, this is a screenshot from the Google search results, and no one was searching for BigBlueButton. So it was quite unknown. And since then, since March 2020, the search queries rised, and it made it way easier to find BigBlueButton. So I wrote an email to my supervisor saying, okay, we can continue building our own solution, but there's something out there that's called BigBlueButton, and it's actually exactly what we need. And we should focus our time on integrating this into our IT infrastructure. And the response came quite prompt the other day, saying, okay, we can do this. We can have a test if this is working for us. We should do some load testing if this is scaling probably. But we should also continue our own development. The continuing of our own development was stopped quite soon after that, because we figured out that BigBlueButton is actually quite good. But we didn't know at the time how many courses we have, how many students we will have in parallel, so what are the requirements for the system, what will be the available bandwidth if we want to deploy this in our own local network. And at that time, it was also clear that the IT strategy was different from the whole university and our department. The university had their focus on a system that would be free of a lot of maintenance from their side. It should not involve any custom software development. So their choice was going with Zoom. But for us, and I'm the part of the health department, our focus has always been on data sovereignty and data protection. And so we wanted to have a solution that is on premise. So that's where the path split. We then installed BigBlueButton on a virtual machine, and we knew at that time already that virtual machines are not the best solution, but that's the only thing we had in the first few days. And so we installed this and did some load testing, first with an internal meeting with colleagues, and we discovered some issues there with frozen clients if a lot of webcams are shared. And that we then took it to our PC labs, where we had 80 computers running, each with 4 different windows of Google Chrome with BigBlueButton in there, and then we monitored the system regarding CPU, RAM, network traffic, and figured out if this is scaling and if we can deploy this in our own infrastructure. And there were quite a few issues back then. What we figured out, what are the parameters that we can configure to get this working for the new semester. And it was also in these days that there was the decision made that the new semester is going to be totally online. And so we have to find a solution and get it working in a few weeks. And gladly, the start of the semester was postponed for a few weeks. So we had a few more days to get ready. So what we did is we went with the solution that was out there, and that was Greenlight. And we had some quite difficult conflicting requirements there. On the one side, we had the data protection officer of our state that said that internal meetings and video conferencing with sensitive data must be in our own local network and cannot be in the cloud somewhere. And on the other hand, the IT department of the university had some strict regulations concerning the bandwidth, and said, okay, if you want to do video conferencing in our own infrastructure here, you have to restrict it a lot, because otherwise we have trouble that the bandwidth is not enough for all the other services that we want to provide here. And so the different kinds of video conferencing that we wanted to do was there. And on one side, it was this online classroom that was the primary use case for BigBlueButton. But there was also the different use cases that are more the classical video conferencing like the exchange between different stars for organizational matters, online exams, digital offices, where that was the replacement for the actual offices where the students can come in and ask the teachers different questions. But we didn't have a lot of server capacity, and we didn't have a lot of bandwidth. And so we wanted to split this because we had the different requirements, that the conferences or these video conferences that were sensitive, that they would be in our own local network, and all the other conferences that are not that sensitive, like a normal class, that they would be in a trusted cloud provider. But this separation of the different types of rooms or video conferences was not possible using Moodle, Greenlight, or all the other tools that were out there. And so the only solution that was possible for us and that we came around with was splitting it up using multiple Greenlight instances. And at a time, we had 6 different Greenlight systems running, each for a different use case. And then we had a schedule here with all the classes that were taking place at what time, at what date, and what of the instances they should use. Each of them configured a bit differently, some where it was required for everyone to have an account, some where guests were allowed. But not only was that quite challenging to administer, but also was Greenlight not working for everything that we required. The role mapping wasn't working with our local LDAP system. We had to do a lot of customization for our corporate identity. We wanted to prevent the users from editing their own profile. There was no German help documentation. We wanted to prevent that the students can create rooms on some servers. And so we had to do a lot of customization. And it was an enormous effort to run and maintain this fork of Greenlight that we had back then. And the more Greenlight developed, these features came into the main product, and it was more and more difficult to keep up and maintain our own fork. And so we had a different product at the time to monitor the usage of BigBlueButton for every meeting. And that tool we called a statistics tool. And we built this using Laravel and the PHP API. And so we figured out that it was quite easy to control BigBlueButton using this API. And so this small, little, insignificant tool became the foundation of what PILOS is today. We then had to decide if we want to develop our own solution. And using these 6 different Greenlight instances was not practical for us. And so the chance that we saw with building our own solution that would fit into these specific requirements would then fulfill our specific needs and would simplify the administration of the different services and the different front ends, where if a user is changing their name, we have to change it on all the different Greenlight instances. If their role is changing, we have to do this, give support. If there's one server failing, then they have to manually switch to a different Greenlight instance. So that was really a lot of work for us to do from the support perspective, and we wanted to reduce this by having one platform where you can do everything in one system. And we also thought that this is quite a risky operation to try to build our own front end, because that's quite complex and Greenlight has a lot of features. And if we want to do this, it has to be kind of more or less feature equivalent. It has to be stable. It needs to scale with the amount of users. And it should be easy for the users to switch to the new system, ideally without them doing anything, and still continue to using all the rooms and all the settings that I have already configured. So that was kind of the position where we are at. And then we decided, okay, we want to really develop our own front end. And to do this, we need to have an API to talk to BigBlueButton. And so there was the BigBlueButton API back then. And there were a few people in the community, including myself, that were quite frustrated because the focus of BigBlueButton back then was mainly on improving the main product and not the API. And there were a few different opinions on what to focus on and security concerns. And so a few of us made our own BigBlueButton fork that we then called little red button and introduced a few new features, a few tools that helped the developers. We changed that the API does not require env files, but instead can be used by passing the credentials into the constructor of the API and so on. Improved a lot of the documentation. And I'm glad to tell you today that most of the changes that we integrated back then were then also adapted by the core team and brought back into the main BigBlueButton API. So kind of all the improvements that we did are now available for everyone, also using the official API. So having this as the foundation, a good API that is ready to use for all the different use cases, and this statistics tool that we were able to use and kind of to demonstrate this functionality, and we then built PILOS as the main product. And now I will talk about a bit about this main product. And the first thing I want to talk about is the user interface. When we switched to the API, when we switched to our own system, it was important for us that we don't lose the users in this transition process, that it was really familiar for them to use this, because it's looking similar to Greenlight. They know the core functionalities, and kind of the layout and all is looking similar. So that was really important for us from the beginning. So we made it look similar to Greenlight. What was also important is that it's multilingual, so we have international students here, so it, at least for us, had to be in German and in English. And now you can also add your own language, but kind of these are the only ones that I'm capable of speaking. And it should be a system that is really easy to customize, because we didn't want to build this just for us, but also for the community to also use it in their institutions and everywhere else where they're interested in. The latest addition that we have to the rooms is our room description. So it's a feature that you might know from some learning management systems. It's a page that you can design using a what you see is what you get editor, where you can add additional information about this course, some materials, the agenda, a meeting schedule. So this is something that you can put on the front of the room page. Then we also have a concept that's really unique, is our room membership. So students and other staff can be part of the room permanently and then find this room on their start page, and they don't have to enter their access code again and again, but are managed there and can use the room depending on their specific role. And there's kind of participants as kind of the regular thing that we have in BigBlueButton, and moderator being the moderator in the session. But there's also a higher role that's called the co-owner for courses where you have multiple staff teaching this information, and they share the same permissions. They can adjust the settings, manage the members, upload files, and so on. And there's also a self-enrollment option, so the students can be part of the room and you don't have to add them explicitly. You can also import them from a list from learning management systems using their email address. Then we have the file management system. It's similar to Greenlight, but the main difference is that you can upload multiple files and then select the files that you want to share with the session. So they are then copied into the session, and you can select which one is the default one to start with. And then in BigBlueButton, you can then change between the different files, but you can also allow the file to be downloaded via PILOS, and so that the students can access the slides even outside of the video conference. Then we have some statistics tools in there that we built before the learning dashboard was there, to kind of show where the students left and kind of what their activity was, and also a list of the attendance, what time they joined, how long they were there, and then you can download this in a spreadsheet format. So this is an overview of something that's kind of unique if you talk about the integrated load balancer, because we have in the center here this persistent room where we have different modules attached to this, like the file management and the different settings. And then each room, as soon as you click on start, a meeting is created in BigBlueButton. And next to the meeting, we then record the statistics and the attendance. But each room has a room type associated to this. And this room type is kind of, is it an online class? Is it an internal meeting? Is it an exam? And so these are different room types, and each room type is linked to a server pool. And into the server pool, you have multiple BigBlueButton servers, where the load is then distributed on equally. And so you can choose for each room what room type you want to have, and this then decides on what kind of tenant, if you want to call it that way, the actual meeting is taking place. And you can restrict the usage of the room types by the different user groups. So let's say the students are only to create small groups for students, and they are taking place on one server, but they are not allowed to create a lecture or something like this. So kind of these are the main core functionalities, but there's more to this. We have a room search where you can search for public rooms that should be available for everyone in the organization to find. And we have a migration script where you can copy audio rooms and memberships from Greenlight 2. We have a connection to LDAP. We have a multilingualism built in. You can upload your own avatar and use it in BigBlueButton next to your name. We have a really simple Docker setup. It's kind of similar to Greenlight version 2. We have a very fine-grained role and access control where you can set the different permissions. And we have something that's called personalized room links, where you can bypass the restriction that you have that you need in a room, an account on the system, but you can share this with someone and kind of save their name in there, and then it's personalized for them, and they can join this meeting, for example, for guest lectures. So what is ahead of us, and what is something that we have planned? One thing that is in the pipeline and just requires some last testing is the OpenID Connect and the SAML2 integration. And then other ideas that we have for the future is scheduling of meetings for recurring meetings, a new layout for the organization of the rooms, where you can find your own rooms shared with you, where you're a member, and the public, and in all rooms that are public that you can find. We also want to add the ability to host video files that you can then use inside of BigBlueButton to play the video files there, so you don't rely on services like YouTube. And recording management, that's something that we don't have yet, because kind of the DDR policy is something that we are really strict with. And until we have some questions answered there, we don't have it in there, but it's on the roadmap to find a solution for recordings that is GDPR compliant, and where you can really say, okay, these are the students that can watch the video, but no one else, even if they share the link to it. So this has been my talk about PILOS, and now I'm really excited to answer all your questions and your ideas, your feedback and your suggestions about PILOS. Thank you for your attention.
Thanks, Samuel. That was really good. Love the story. I was living it with you there as you went through COVID, and I was thinking necessity is the mother of invention. And you systematically kind of went through some of the options and ended up doing what a lot of developers and entrepreneurs will do. You rolled up your sleeves and you just built it. So very cool to see. And
Thank you.
And I would invite anybody here to ask any questions, type in the chat, obviously reach out to Samuel. And yeah, this is actually a pretty interesting approach, especially the areas where you extended beyond, like multiple presentations to be able to upload. There's some things that we still haven't gotten to yet.
Yeah, so this is one thing that was really important for us, that the lecturer is able to kind of upload all the files for the semester and then kind of use it in advance and switch between the presentations, and don't have the time inside of the meeting to then change if they are a bit quicker with their materials and their thing. And also we wanted to make the management of the different servers and the pools and where the load is distributed, and didn't want to rely on the command line to do all of this. So it's really easy, even for non-technical persons, to kind of configure this all in the UI and say, okay, these are the API credentials, this service should now be taken down for maintenance. These are the different strengths of the service, turn it off and on, and then the system is taking care of the rest in the background. So it's kind of like a user interface for Scalite built into the administer user interface. But that has been kind of just different approaches between Greenlight and our system in BigBlueButton. And I'm looking forward if Greenlight is evolving in the same direction, or if it's kind of focusing on this minimalistic product, giving you a good and easy system. And then if you want to do something more advanced, then you can use tools like PILOS or BBB at scale. There are different solutions out there that have similar concepts. And then there's also BBB Easy, where there's a talk in this conference as well, I think. And I didn't have the chance to look into this product yet, but it's also looking quite interesting.
Very good. Samuel, thank you again for your presentation. Feel free to linger in the room. We'll end the recording, but that was quite a great story. Thanks for sharing it.
You're welcome.